We'll move right on to the demos tonight. We have Stuart, who's going to come tonight and show us something interesting. And I'm going to let him explain what it is. So,
thank you all for inviting me. I have a handout. Actually, I have two handouts. If you haven't received one, let me give you those and you can pass it around. And these, and you can pass that around. The other item we're going to make tonight is called a salt cellar. Now what this does is, everybody goes to the grocery store, buys their salt, gets their salt in a container, takes that salt, and then uses it to cook with. All right. Some people who are salt conscious cooks have different tastes of different types of salts. I'm not one of them. But at the same time, a lot of people have said, I want a way to be able to display those kinds of items because I don't want to just put salt on the table. That's why we make pepper mills for pepper. You don't want to just put the pepper on the table. So what this does is, it allows you to put the salt on the table and you can use it so that one person or another can get their salt for whatever they're going to put on it. Now, the difference of this versus any other box you make is the mechanism by which it opens. Slips and slides and is held in place by a magnet. It's pretty easy to make, pretty easy. Once again, you don't need a lot of wood, you don't need a lot of skill, otherwise I wouldn't be up here. And these are items that you can purchase at any cooking store, or I originally saw this online when my wife used to work at Pottery Barn. And she said, I want to go buy this salt cellar. I said, really? How much does a salt cellar sell for? She says, $35. I said, I got a piece of scrap wood in the shop, which is $3, and I bet I can make that for you. Well, that was sort of a good thing to do and sort of not so good thing to do, because I've got two daughter-in-laws, a daughter, and others who are interested in salt cellars that I didn't know were interested in salt cellars until I made one. The one I passed around started out like this. So here's your block of wood, and in the instructions it says a 4 to 6 inch block of wood, your favorite, whatever it may be. And there's two ways to look at this now. The first is like you would a bowl. This side is the face. This side is the... Yes.
Show it to this camera.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's fine.
This side is the face, and this side is the edge. Now, if you look at the item that's coming around, you'll see that that one was made with the face on top so that the grain lines up this way. And that was the way I prefer to put it on. So when I'm going to make this, it's going to go this way. Whereas this is a face and this is a face. So I can do that, exit off, put it on, and now we've got a piece on the lathe. Then you rough it down to a circle. Okay, so this is now the piece that we have rounded off, and I put a tenon on either side. In order to now use this, so one side of this has the depression, so I know it's the center. The other side doesn't, just because that was the way it was finished. And I'll slip it into here. The next steps sort of are marking out steps. You want to have about a 1/2 inch of height for the top of the top. Or you can have more, but then it sort of doesn't slip around very well. So a 1/2 inch marked there. And I usually use a 6-inch ruler on most things rather than have a big heavy ruler or have a 16-footer in your side of your hand. And then just mark it out. Now on walnut I use a white marker. On light woods I use a dark marker. But this is just so you can see it better. Okay, so there's the top. What we're going to do is go ahead and part this off. Go through the hole, which is real easy. If you don't have one of those, you most often have one of these, a little coping saw. Oh, we're through. So it works equally well. Okay. So now I have the bottom, and for the bottom I want to make the interior have a lip that's about a 1/2 inch. And the reason for that is going to come evident real quick. So once again, take my 1/2 incher, mark it there, and that looks pretty much like a 1/2 inch. Whoop. Okay, that's close enough for what we need. And remember that when you're going face grain, you want to work from this big to the little. If you're using end grain, you work from the middle to the end. Okay? Okay, so we're at the bottom. Fairly smooth. The very first part of this needs to be straight. And the reason is because you're going to drill into that. And you need an area for it to be held on the chuck when you turn it around. So I tend to use a straight box But if you've ever gone to get salt and pushed your finger in to get it, and you end up on a sharp edge, that's about the last time you're going to do it. So instead, get a round nose scraper. Take that little edge off of there and make it round so that the salt sits in a curve. Now you have this part and this part completed. And I don't usually sand this. The reason is there's going to be salt in there. And the salt's going to add moisture, and the moisture is going to go into the wood, and it's smooth as it is. So that sandpaper you got, you guys who won, keep it for something else. All right. The next part of this is how to finish the bottom of the bottom. So that's what this looks like. Okay, you can use spindle gouge or a bowl gouge or a scraper. Doesn't make a big difference what you use to do this with. What you're doing now is you're trying to put a curve on the bottom as that one had. Now, some people want to have a little base on it, and other people don't. I don't. But I still want it to be adequate to be able to hold the size so that it doesn't tip over when it's on the table. That'd be a bad thing. Then you have to clean up all the salt. So if you wanted to leave a little lip, I would leave about an 1/8, 1/16 of an inch. That'd be about it. But as I said, that's not my style on it. Okay. Yeah, may as well clean that up a little better. Now, if I was going to give this as a gift, sand it, got a curve, Got the inside curve to match the outside curve. And the bottom is done, all but the tricky part.
The goo guys?
The goo guys can be added anytime. Now would be a good time. I usually either do 2 lines or 3 lines, and it depends on where I'm going to put my signature or how large of a item I'm going to mark it with. So, 1 usually goes out here. A little wiggle helps. 1 usually goes in there. A wiggle. And that's all I'm going to do because I want to write some things in here. My name, the wood type, maybe the date, a message to the person who it's going to if it's a gift, those kinds of things. Okay. The bottom is done. With the exception, how do we get it to swivel? Everybody have one of these? No, center finders. Okay, during the break I went out into the store, and at Metro Hardware, these are $6.99. They're clear, and they work the same as this one that's yellow. Now what you're going to do is it has 2 sides to it. One of them is a straight 90. The other is a straight 60. We're going to take this straight 90. Going to put it over there, and now I've got the center line on both of these. So I'll take my white pencil, which I can't find, just went somewhere. I'm going to mark a line here and here. Then I'm going to take an awl or a punch or something. I'm going to mark it in the center of this, okay, and of this. Okay. In a either vise or a way to hold it, and the other way to do this is before you actually take the bottom off, you can do this marking and then leave it on and then drill. So the drill is the same 1/4 inch bit that I used to make the beginning with. Now, if I do this right, you'll learn how your lathe becomes a vise. Yep. Well, if this wasn't curved, mine's straight, so that becomes a vise. Or, well, we could do it over here. Now there's 2 holes. One of them is going to go down for the part that you put the dowel into. You can use a wooden dowel, you can use a metal dowel, doesn't make any difference. The key here is you want it to be straight up and down. So, and that should be about at least 3/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Remember I had an inch on here? It's about half. There's my first hole. Why do I want to use a 1/4 inch? Well, it's because the magnets I'm going to use are a 1/4 inch. The other one only goes down about 1/8 of an inch because the magnet is about 1/8 of an inch thick. And these are the super magnets that you can buy. Okay? So there, that's how deep you want to go. Not very deep. The other thing is, when you're drilling this, you want to use a drill bit that has a not pointed drill, but a brad point, so that it goes in and it doesn't go around anywhere. Okay? So there we are. So here's what you have now. The bottom. The top. What am I going to do with this thing? Well, I can shape it any way I want. It can be a mound, like this. It can be flat, like the other ones. It can be made with gewgaws or anything else you want to put on there if you have tools to do it with. Okay? So once this is held on and in there, this being the top, not the bottom, this gets taken off and then I do whatever I want with the top. Or I make it multiple things. We're going to make this flat just because that's the one I showed you. And I'm also going to show you the other way to do the drilling. Now, when you do this, before I put that in, let me go back to one thing. You want this to line up so that the grain fits the pattern that you have in the wood. So where was this? Oh, let's see. I think right there. Yeah. Right there. See it? Where the grain comes across? So I want to mark that. I usually mark it on two sides, just because whatever way you mark it, it's always on the bottom when you go to turn it around. Okay. So now that mark correlates to this. Like so. And the hole that you marked is now known where it is. Okay? Because as soon as you put this on, and you know where that is relative to it, if you wanted to, you could mark the hole. We'll mark the hole. What the heck? Mark one of the holes. Now, I can put this back on. Find out where my mark is. It's right there. And mark my ½ inch. So my 1/2 inch is right there. How do I know that that's going to mark up with this? There's a magic little piece that you have in your shops. Maybe, maybe you don't. Dowel rod markers. So these are 1/4 inch or 3/8 or 5/16 or 1/2. Put that in the hole. This one's the tough one because it's only 1/8 of an inch. Put that in the hole. You know where your mark is, right there. And you can correlate it because it's right here with the other mark. So now I've got both sides marked. I can feel where I'm supposed to go. And just made my mark. Same thing on the other side with this one. Okay? Probably we should do the harder one to do. Ugh. There we go. So this one's in here. This one comes around down. I mark my mark. I feel. I tap. Usually falls out. If I marked it correctly, there should be a hole. Oh, I missed it a little, but that's okay. I know where to go. So I missed it a little bit, but I know where the hole goes. There you go. Now, finish off the top any way you want. You were right about this. Oh, there we go. In the handout, there, as I said, are 3 ways to do this. One of the ways is that you don't go all the way in, that you sort of leave an edge in the middle, and then you just take this part, go back on, and you have jam chucked it on. Pretty simple, pretty easy to do. One of the other ways is you leave this off the lathe, you put it onto a coal jaws, it grabs it on the outside, and it's flat, and you take it off that way. I like this way primarily because it's easier and it doesn't require extra things. So we're just going to flatten this. Now, we talked about gewgaws before. This is another area that you can put a gewgaw into. You're not going to see it as a gewgaw on the bottom of the salt because your fingers are in there, the salt's in there. But when you turn this thing around, sometimes somebody's going to turn it over. All the salt's going to go on the floor. We're going to look at this neat thing that's underneath there. So that's another way to embellish at the same time. Okay, so I didn't make up my marks incorrectly. Now, the only other thing you have to be aware of is which one marks with which one, because this hole is 1/8 of an inch, this hole is 1/2 inch. And I only need about 1/4 of an inch on one and about 1/8 of an inch on the other. So, once again, that's why I marked it. Well, is that the mark? No. Like I said, it'll be on the other side. There you go. Well, maybe it wasn't. Yep, right there. Okay, so this is the 1/4 inch hole. If you don't lock this, you're going to get this when you turn the drill on. So this is the 1/4 inch one. And I don't want to go too far, because if I do, I come out the top. And this is the 1/8 inch one. Okay, so this side's done. This side I need to do something with. So once again, if you have, you can use a cold jaws, you can use a jam chuck to jam it on with. Take that off. Because my wife said, "What would you like for Christmas?" I said, "Another chuck with some bigger jaws. That'll probably fit that." When she asked me what I was going to do with another chuck, I said, "You remember those salt things you want me to make?" Yeah, this will make it a lot easier. Now, in order to not leave marks on it, you do sort of have to cover the edge. But because it's all the way around, and you're not going to put a lot of pressure on it anyway, 1 or 2 would be fine. And you buy the future jaws that you need by the, well, you tell your spouse, by the size of the jam chuck you're going to be needing for future salt cellars, because the bigger the more you can put in. You always needed a new tool. Now, sometimes I go this way, sometimes I go this way. This is the better way to go now, to take off more wood, because you also have the tape going around. So I'm going to make this have a little pattern on the top tonight, just because it's different than what we did. And it'll give you a little bit of something to hold on to. Not that you need it, because it slips around anyway. So we're done with the top, after you sanded it. Now, Here's your dowel. Some people have a preference on the way they do this. They say you need to put the dowel in here because more of the dowel is held in here with the thicker glue, longer, and it works better. Other people say, no, do it so that it's this way, so it has more room to swivel. I don't think it makes a difference. But glue one end in or the other. Now, this is going to be a little long for this. See? But that's okay. Because your lathe can do all sorts of things. It can be a dowel shrinker. Whoop, better not do that. I like to rest my arm on this, just so that I know it won't come out. Also twist it a little so that you don't have the edges be sharp. Okay, let's see what we got. I'm getting close. Getting closer. I just didn't drill long enough into there, but that's okay. Oh yeah. Magnet. The tricky part of the magnet is making sure that you don't put the magnet in the wrong way. Otherwise it goes zzzz, zzzz. So once again, I put 2 magnets in, take one off. Just so I know that it'll fit. So that's how they are. It's not glued in right yet, but it will be when I'm done and it lines up. Okay? So it turns into the box you just saw. Finish this any way you want, but don't finish the inside. Okay? Remember we talked about that? The other thing is, I like to use walnut oil on walnut, but I also like to Beal buff these things because people like slick, shiny things. That's one of the things they like to buy. So, you make this slick and shiny, somebody's going to buy it. And as I said, it goes over. So, pretty easy breezy deal. Any questions? You can make these in half hour, 40 minutes, hour. Once you start making them, you can make them pretty quick. Alrighty, thank you.
Just remember to finish them on the light so that you can turn them in for the creativity.
Yes, this is, you know, oh, there's one other thing I didn't really talk about, but that is useful. And that is, some people will say, I don't want to have such a big area in here. You know, that's a lot of salt. So you don't have to do that. You can make this with a piece that fits in there in between that now gives you 2 compartments. All you do is glue in a piece of wood, or instead of using the spindle gouge or bowl gouge or any other tool to get it out, carve it out. Then you've got as many compartments as you want, or make more compartments by using more sizes. So you're not limited to this or to the one I showed you or to this. You can make them multiple types. One woman I know who we gave one for an engagement gift used salt in one, not pepper in the other, but spices that they use routinely at the table. So that was her way to do it. So, thank you all.